Hi, I am Masood Jaspi, and today I present my work with Michael Frank on adults and children's comprehension of logical connectives in a guessing game. Let's start with an overview of the talk. Previous studies discussed two main areas of difference between adults and 4-year-old children in interpreting logical connectives. We present three studies that investigate adults and children's interpretation of these connectives using binary, ternary, and free-form judgment tests. The results suggest that 4-year-olds' interpretation of logical connectives may not be as different from adults as previously supposed. Previous studies suggest that children may differ from adults in two ways. First, children may reject a disjunction like A or B when only one of them is true, but adults accept such disjunctions. Second, children may accept A or B when both A and B are true, but adults reject such disjunctions. Let me explain these claims using an example. Suppose that you're holding a cart with the picture of a cat on it. Bob is blindfolded and wants to guess the animal on the cart. He says, "There is a cat or a dog on the cart." Was Bob's guess right? The first claim says that adults say Bob was right, but children may not, at least at the rate that adults do. Now, this time, imagine that you're playing the same guessing game with Bob, but you're holding a card with a cat and a dog. Bob says there is a cat or a dog on the card again. The second claim is that adults do not consider this a right guess, while children do. Under the Gricean theory of pragmatics, adults do not consider such cases and such guesses as right because they reason that Bob saying or instead of and implies that he did not consider both animals to be on the card. Otherwise, he would have said cat and dog. This is often referred to as the exclusivity implicature of disjunction. Previous literature on children's semantic and pragmatic development suggests that children cannot follow such pragmatic reasoning to derive the relevant implicatures. In our studies, we used a similar guessing game to assess children's understanding of the logical connectives. The guessing game had a set of cards with the pictures of one or two animals. In each trial, participants saw one card. A blindfolded cartoon character, or in the case of children, a puppet wearing a sleeping mask, guessed what animal was on the card. Participants were asked to tell us whether the guess was right or not. As I said, the game had two types of cards, the ones with one animal, for example a cat, and the ones with two animals, for example cat and dog. The guesser used four types of guesses. The ones that did not name any of the animals on the card, for example elephant, the ones that named one out of one or one out of two animals on the card, for example cat, the ones with and the ones with or. For and or guesses, if there were two animals on the card, they were always the animals named in the guess. Crossing the types of cards and guesses gave us 8 different trial types, which in this talk, in the interest of time, I focus on the critical trial types with the connectives and or. In the first study, we recruited 104 English-speaking adults via Amazon Mechanical Turk. Half of the participants had the options of right and wrong to provide judgments, and the other half had the option of kinda right as well. They saw one trial per trial type. Here you see the results with 2 options on the left and those with 3 options on the right. The error bars throughout the talk show the bootstrap 95% confidence intervals. First, for a guess like cat and dog, when the card only had a cat on it, adults considered the guess wrong if they had 2 options of right and wrong. If they were given 3 options, they considered the guess mostly wrong, but around a quarter of adults reported that the guess was kind of right, presumably because one of the animals was guessed right. If the card had both the cat and the dog on it, adults considered the guess cat and dog right regardless of the number of options. When the guess was cat or dog, and there was only a cat on the card, adults considered the guess right with 2 options and mostly right with 3. If there was both a cat and a dog on the card, adults considered the disjunctive guess as right when they had 2 options. If they had 3 options, the same disjunctive guess was judged as mostly kinda right. A mixed effects logistic regression using the R package LME4 with the fixed effect of disjunction type and random intercepts and slopes for subjects in three options condition found adults more likely to choose kinda right over right when both disjuncts were true. To summarize, study 1 showed that adults considered both disjunctive guesses as right when they had 2 options of right and wrong. This is close to the truth values of logical disjunction for these trial types. However, when adults had 3 options, most considered a disjunctive guess with 1 true disjunct as right, but some thought it was not completely right. When both disjuncts were true, most adults considered the disjunctive guess as neither right nor wrong. The results of study 1 suggested that using 3 response options may have a better chance of capturing children's pragmatic reasoning. Therefore, study 2 used a ternary truth value judgment task. In study 2, we asked for children's judgments in the same type of guessing game. 42 English-speaking children between the age of around 3 and 5, and the mean of 4 years and 4 months participated. We used the same design as study 1, except Bob was replaced with a puppet that wore a sleeping mask, and children were asked to give the puppet a big star if the puppet was right, a little star if the puppet was a little bit right, and a circle if the puppet was not right. We had 8 trial types and 2 trial per trial type. Here I show the results for children's judgments on the right, and on the left I show the adult judgments with 3 options from study 1 for comparison. For the guesses with and, when only one of the animals was on the card, children and adults showed similar patterns of rejecting the guess. Children had slightly more kinda right guesses in such trials, which may be due to their desire to avoid punishing the puppet with a circle rather than a star. For conjunction guesses with both animals on the card, adults and children considered the guesses right. Moving to disjunction, if only one of the animals was on the card, children and adults showed similar patterns of tendency towards considering it right and kinda right, sometimes. The major difference between adults and children was when the puppet used or and both animals were on the card. Children rewarded the puppet with a big star in such cases, indicating that the guess was right, while most adults in study 1 considered the guess kinda right. To better understand the differences in judgments between adults and children, we used 2 separate Bayesian ordinal mixed effects logistic models using the R package RStan. We used the trial types as fixed effects and included random effects for subjects. We make inferences based on the highest posterior density intervals for the coefficients estimated from each model. Because predictors are dummy-coded, we examine contrasts of interest by computing the difference between coefficients. The models show that adults and children have similar positive or negative trends of judgment overall, except when comparing the 2 disjunction trial types. Adults consider a disjunction guess more negatively when both disjuncts are true. To summarize, the results of our truth value judgment task with 3 options suggested that children and adults differ in their judgments of disjunction when both disjuncts are true. This is in line with the second difference discussed earlier and a large body of research on children's development of pragmatic reasoning and scalar implicatures. The common explanation for this difference goes like this. When adults hear Bob say cat or dog, they recognize that Bob had the alternative of saying cat and dog, yet he chose or instead of and. Therefore, he probably meant one or the other and not both animals. Children, however, do not recognize or remember and as an alternative to or. Therefore, they don't exclude the possibility of both animals being in the card. However, we observed that in spontaneous reactions to the puppet, children emphasized the word and as what the puppet should have said, yet considered the puppet's guess at the end right. We hypothesize that children may follow the pragmatic reasoning that adults do, but they rather correct the puppet verbally and not say that the puppet was wrong in any way, for example, by giving a lower star or just saying that the puppet is wrong. Study 3 investigated this hypothesis. So in study 3, we had a similar design to study 2, except that this time we did not use rewards and simply asked children to say yes to the puppet if he was right and no if he was not. We told children to help the puppet say it better if he was not right. Based on children's responses in study 2, we defined 4 categories of free-form verbal reaction. First, only saying yes or no. Second, saying what animal is on the card, like cat or cat and dog. Third, using the words only or just, like just a cat. And finally, saying both or emphasizing the connective and, like cat and dog, as some children did in the second study. Our prediction was that children will use the word both or emphasize and more often when 2 animals are on the card. After the child was done with his or her feedback to the puppet, we asked the verbal version of the forced choice binary judgment task as well. We asked, was the puppet right? We predicted that children would respond with yes to this question, even though they emphasized the word and to the puppet as a correction when both disjuncts are true. We pre-registered these details of study 3 in an as-predicted format before running the study. First, let's take a look at the binary forced choice judgments obtained in the same study right after children provided their free-form feedback to the puppet. On the left, I have included the binary adult judgments reported in study 1 for comparison. Here I show the results all at once. We see that adults and children show similar response patterns in all the trials. With 2 options, most children consider disjunctive yeses right when one or both disjuncts are true. Let's take a look at our summary table again. The forced choice judgment task with 2 options showed similar results for adults and children. The one with 3 options suggested that children consider disjunction guesses when both disjuncts are true completely right, while adults take some issue with them. Now let's take a look at children's spontaneous feedback to the puppet. Here the graphs show children's linguistic feedback to the puppet right after they hear the puppet's guess. The x-axis shows whether the child said yes, no, or did not say either yes or no. The colors classify what children said other than a simple yes or no. So for example, saying cat, basically what is on the card, or saying just a cat, only a cat, or saying both, or emphasizing and, like cat and dog. When the puppet guessed something like cat and dog, and both animals were on the card, children tended to only say yes, shown by the gray color. With the same guess, when only one of the animals was on the card, children said either no, no cat, that's the yellow fill, or no only cat, the blue fill. Sometimes children dropped no and only said cat or only cat. For guesses like cat or dog, when only a cat was on the card, children preferred not to say yes or no, but rather mention which animal is on the card. This is a reasonable feedback to the puppet, since the puppet's guess leaves both possibilities open. Finally, when both animals were on the card and the puppet guessed something like cat or dog, children mostly avoided a clear yes-no response and responded with both or cat and dog, emphasizing the word and. Others simply said cat and dog with no emphasis on and. In coding emphasis, we stayed very conservative and only marked those responses with very loud and long ands as emphasized ands. Here we show the rate of feedback categories for the disjunction guesses. There is a significant increase in the number of both and emphatic and comments when or is used and both disjuncts are true. A Bayesian mixed effects logistic regression with the fixed effect of card type and random intercepts and slopes for subjects using the R package BRMS found children more likely to produce both and emphatic ands when 2 animals were on the card. The results here show that children do not find disjunctive guesses here where both disjuncts are true completely right and without problem. Therefore, going back to our summary, Our analysis of children's spontaneous feedback raises the possibility that children, like adults, consider disjunctive guesses when both disjuncts are true as problematic. To conclude, we presented 3 studies that investigated adults' and children's interpretation of logical connectives using binary, ternary, and free-form judgment tasks. The results suggested that 4-year-olds' interpretation of logical connectives may not be as different from adults as previously supposed. Our studies also highlight the challenge of capturing pragmatic inferences using experimental methods, both in adults and children. We hope to further address these challenges in our future work. Thank you, and thank Eve Clark, Christopher Potts, Ellen Markman, and the members of Stanford's Markman Lab and the Language and Cognition Lab, as well as the children and staff at the Bing Nursery School.